there shall rise two Tumuaki from among the ranks of the people.
A prophecy made 90 years ago by the Ratana movement's own founder, Tahupotiki Ratana.
There are many prophecies, but the split in the church and two leaders sitting side by side is a prophecy that I've never given too much attention to, because such a thought would be blasphemous.
Prophecy predicting a split in the Ratana church. Prophecy of our time.
E toru ngā take e hinga ai tō koutou hāhi me tō koutou kotahitanga. Tuatahi ko te whakaaro Pākehā. Tuarua ko te aroha ki te moni me te mana. Tuatoru ko taku whānau ake.
I love giving this reminder to people that the hāhi, the movement, was established on the 8th of November 1918, and the Wairua Tapu came to Ratana and told him to unite. What we had envisioned for the future wasn't quite fulfilled in the way in which we wanted it to.
The Ratana movement grew from a spiritual following of Tahupotiki Ratana, a faith healer who had a vision from God to unite the iwi Māori. The epicentre of church activities is Ratana Pā, just outside of Whanganui, and the pan-tribal movement has an estimated 50,000 followers. It is recognised as a political force both in Te Ao Māori and on the national stage.
Our movement is in probably the most historic time since 1980, and we're living in prophecy.
For the past 3 years, hidden behind scenes of ceremony and unity, the Ratana church movement has been self-imploding.
The unity that we preach about from all our pulpits, every apostolo preaches about the cornerstones of the Ratana faith: unity, love, peace. You know, those are the cornerstones of our faith. And then we find that we've been put into this situation where it's almost families are divided, communities are divided, and a lot of them are wondering why.
Two factions have grown from concerns around power and control. Kiriyama Pene is on one side of the divide, as is former Labour MP Mita Ririnui. They say they are supported by morehu from 16 out of 18 regions.
We've never been here as an organisation before, and so there's no blueprint on how to deal with it.
Of course, there's the other side of the split, mostly those based at Ratana Pā itself. It's been framed as Ratana Pā whānau versus the rest of the motu.
Well, it's unfortunate if people have framed it that way, because that certainly has never been our intention. It is to... the leadership issue is very important, but the kaupapa āmahi, the very foundation on which the movement itself has been founded and built over a number of decades, is probably, to some of us, more important.
Whilst we managed to speak to one side of the split, those here at Ratana Pā say a media ban is now in place because they're considering legal action that may be jeopardised if they appear on camera. But they have gone public before. In the meantime, morehu or Ratana followers are left wondering what's going on and who is the rightful Tumuaki.
Te Manuao te koha mutungata mo te kaiarehi hou o te hāhi Ratana.
Is it usual that there was more than one delegate put up?
No, not at all. This time round there's only been two. previous occasions, there were 5, and one before that there were 9. So it's a highly sought after position, put it that way.
The fact that there were 2 people wasn't a direct indication of the split within these 2 parties.
I think it is. It is. One of the candidates came through the whānau process. Well, they both came through the whānau process, but obviously from different factions within the whānau. And regardless of that, they still have to be subject to a vetting process by the runanga. And after that, confirmation by hui whakapuma, the representatives from the people. So the final decision through the voting delegates confirms the people's representative, the people's choice.
The Tumuaki is the titular head of the Ratana movement. On one side, Sunny or Manuao Tamou, nominated and confirmed by Ratana Pāwhānau. On the other, Andre Meihana, the son of the former Tumuaki, the late Harerangi Meihana, who passed this time last year. Nominated and confirmed by representatives of 16 regions from throughout the motu. Both Sunny Tamou and Andre Meihana are descendants of Ratana and are cousins. All parties speak highly of both men, but Meta says it comes down to upholding the whakapapa of the church's process.
We were quite happy to go through a shared process to elect a Tumuaki, one Tumuaki, and then we would have left regardless with the satisfaction that we'd achieved it. But that wasn't the case.
It's a messy situation that goes back almost a decade, when there were tensions around the ill health of the former Tumuaki, Harerangi Meihana.
For a period of time, he no longer attended his duties. He was sending his senior apotoros to look after his roles.
Concerns about his capacity to make decisions peaked in 2016 when an attempt to appoint trustees to the Ratana Pā Reserves Trust, which manages Ratana lands, ended up in the Māori Land Court because the established process hadn't been followed.
You know, some of the practices were terrible. I've never seen that before in our faith. You know, misrepresentation of the tūmakitanga.
Concern that led to a call for Harerangi Meihana to be relieved of his duties through a remit presented at the 2020 Hui Whakapumo, an annual hui to discuss policy and governance matters.
And somewhere in there, the morehu felt a certain amount of passion. If you ever do see the remit, you'll see the remit actually says that it's the morehu who are saying, Papa, you've served us well. We can ask no more of you. You've gone beyond.
The remit presented to relieve the former Tumuaki Harerangi Meihana of his duties states, this is a compassionate request intended to honour Harerangi Meihana's personal commitment and service as Tumuaki o Te Hāhi Ratana from 1999 to 2020, and to relieve him of any further stress. It goes on to say that for the sake of clarity, the tūranga of Tumuaki will not be removed from Harerangi Meihana, but the hāhi will need to put in place a plan to ensure the duties of the Tumuaki are fulfilled and the hāhi structure is stabilised. And that's when the sparks started to fly.
There's a tikanga, even within the kaupapa āmahi, that talks about a Tumuaki staying in their position till the time that they go. And this has been a tradition through every single Tumuaki. And so this remit kind of was a different one. It went against some of that.
Christine Waitai-Rapana, a member of the Ratana Pā but who now practices her faith through the Assembly of God, says whānau were upset at what they saw as an undermining of the spiritual mantle of Tumuaki.
I won't comment on the content of that remit because it is very sensitive, especially to the whānau. And so again, it all goes back to the process. Like, was this the appropriate time to bring this up? Was this the right way to do it?
That remit was allowed to go to hui whakapuma, so it had to be accepted that the former church executive had considered the remit, considered it to be in line with the kaupapa āmahi or the church constitution, and allowed it to go through. I had the responsibility as the incoming chairman of hui whakapuma to ensure that the remit had a hearing, and that's all my role was.
To see things unfold in the way that they did on that in 2020 was eye-opening for me, because I knew too that COVID was pulling on our emotions too, in a way, because we had a hui whakapumo that was later than normal. You know, we usually have a hui whakapumo during Easter, but because of COVID, we had it later on. And so I guess it was just being sensitive to what everyone was feeling around that time. All I can say is that it was expected, the reaction was expected.
Mita Ririnui, as the chairman of the hui whakapumo, asked for a delay in consideration of the remit until the next hui whakapumo.
And that was supported by hui whakapumo, so there it ended. Subsequently, Andre Meihana, the former Tumuaki, passed away.
Ratana Pā, built on what was T.W. Ratana's farm just outside of Whanganui. It's home to about 300 followers and whānau, an epicentre of the church activities. But in an unprecedented move 2 years ago, whānau based here changed all the locks on Manuao, the administration, accommodation and catering facilities. A lockout that prevented staff from accessing the facilities and keeping followers away for their annual celebrations. Citing COVID as the reason.
We have carried on as best we can. Our hospital visits, our funerals, our huis, we've carried them on as best we can. But we know that in our grandparents' times and our parents' times, there was always one singular voice. And that one voice guided us all. It kept us united. It kept us heading in the same direction. We've been denied that one voice for the last few years. And the morehu at grass level are wondering, why can't we arrive at that one voice?
This year's hui whakapumo was an opportunity to try and pull the factions together.
And we went there with that intention, but that's not what we were met with. In fact, our chairperson offered the Oliver branch to the other committee who had taken over the facilities to work together in this case, but that was rejected. And no amount of discussion was going to change that decision.
Major appointments to key positions are made at hui whakapumo through a voting process, traditionally done by the approximately 300 po who represent the morehu from throughout the country.
So after something like 3.5 hours of discussion and debate and fierce debate, the only option for our committee, our members, was to leave the room. But we did conduct our own committee in one of the conference rooms, and business as usual.
You've been described as the breakaway group. That's correct, isn't it, if you were the ones walking out?
No, I wouldn't call us the breakaway group. We have conducted our business, consistent with the kaupapa āmahi. We've never gone outside of that. That's not a breakaway group. That's just a group that's been prevented from conducting its business in the normal facilities that are provided for that purpose. In other words, locked out. Group that's been locked out.
I lead one of the takiwas who chose to go home. We did not want to be involved in a negative, hurtful, but I appreciate that our takiwas stayed, and they stayed for a purpose because they wanted to put an olive branch on the table. They wanted to try and resolve the impasse and work out one whakapumo for both of us, not two. In the end, they had to walk out.
The events at this year's Hui Whakapumo have left many followers of the Ratana faith unsettled. Even some who were in the whānau's camp were stunned at what went down.
The process is so important to us as Māori, and when you look at pohiri process, those processes are in place to protect us, to ensure that we're able to relate with each other in aroha, and we have karanga, whai kōrero, waiata there for a purpose, so that we can ensure that the whanaungatanga moving forward is right and proper, and we can advance together. And so for me, process is so important no matter where you are, whether it be on the marae, whether it be in a restaurant, whether it be within the māramatanga. Process is so important. A process can uplift the kaupapa, or it can allow kaupapa to fall to the ground. And unfortunately, that's the position we're in at the moment.
Is this becoming personal?
I don't think it's been personal from day one. I definitely think that the Ratana Church has chosen to press an issue about their role. But in doing that, they've probably damaged some of the most sacred tūrangas in our faith. So if you can understand our people, we actually see the Tumuaki as a very special tūranga, you know, and that we see that as a guardian of our faith. We don't see it as a pire or a president kind of role. So the Tumuaki to us was always a person who carried the best interest of the morehu, always cared about us, always felt for us. And so we would be loyal to that tūranga. If he asked anything of us, and I mean 50,000 people, we would immediately act on that request. The families damaged that.
They in turn would say that the remit that was put forward was damaging.
Yeah. Uncle Harry was a very kind person. You know, this is the leader of our movement, treated us like part of the family. And for people to think that the morehu would disrespect a person that kind, after all the years he's led us, is an abuse of us. You know, using a person like that to accuse us that we would ever do that to them. And that's why 16 out of 18 takiwa have been very clear where they stand. We will back Harry and what he wanted against his own family.
The problem is that it's not to do with sides, but it's become that, and I love my whānau, and I have whānau on this side. I've also got whānau on this side, and I guess my closer whānau, I really value the connection I have there, but I don't want to lose that because I have aroha for this side of my whānau. And so in terms of the whakaaro around allegiance, I try not to get distracted by that, but I'll try to go back to the foundation of our kaupapa, our tapa, which is about unity under the one true God. And
is unity possible considering everything that has happened?
With God, anything is possible. Because our whakapono, our maramatanga, is not just lip service.
What attempts were made to clear this up through tikanga, through communication?
Well, that was attempted on the night of the meeting at Ratana in the conference room. That was rejected outright. It was offered several times and rejected over and over again. I think it became obvious at that point that this is not going to end well.
Why not just let the Ratana Pā whānau continue with that mahi?
See, that's the point. The Tumuaki doesn't have a role of the Tumuaki is universal. It's not confined to a community in Ratana Pā in this case. If the person remains in Ratana Pā and work within a community, that's fine, but how do the rest of the country get serviced through this particular leadership? That's a big question that needs to be answered.
With both sides digging in, the issue has now been put in front of the Māori Land Court.
There has to be a decision. If we can avoid any involvement of the courts, that's really good. But there has to be a resolution to this.
What's before the courts?
An application went to the courts to resolve the issue around the Māori Land Court, that is, of who is the legitimate body of the church, in terms of the church executive. Also, there are performance issues or compliance issues with the Ratana Reserves Trust and how they carry out their role, because they are a body empowered through the Māori Land Court. So it's up to the Māori Land Court to basically intervene in that case. So those are the two matters before the court.
Is there a resolution in sight?
At the end of the day, the dad was very clear, and this will be the resolution, irrespective of where the family might go. When we formed the church, the Holy Spirit actually said to me, our founder, don't form a church, right? And the morehu needed somebody to bury them, do their last rites, to marry them, christen their children. And the other churches wouldn't do that anymore. They rejected us because we followed right. That's the reason why we have a church. For those reasons. And when Ratana said, well, are you fellas sure you want a church? The morehu all said, yes, please. And he said, Iho has said to me that I must always follow the wish of the people. He approved the formation of the church. The church was not formed by him or by the Ratana family. It was formed by a request of his followers. It will be the same resolution now. It will be the followers who determine the outcome even of this issue.